Hey, Wayne Henderson here with you on this special mini episode of your Packers Fan Podcast, the show by and for fans of the 13-time NFL champion Green Bay Packers. It is now July 2020, and one big thing that happens in July is Christmas in July. But the other big thing happening in July, while we patiently wait to find out if we're going to get a full season or preseason or anything, is the annual Podcast Awards nominations. They are open again. We thank you so much for your help in getting the Packers Fan Podcast nominated as a finalist at least 3 times in the past few years at podcastawards.com. And I'd like to know if you would be willing to help us yet again. You would? Awesome. That is great to hear. The annual People's Choice Podcast Awards nominations are now open. And sure, it's been a strange off season, but this is a sign of normalcy. This is the 15th annual People's Choice Podcast Awards, and being considered for the finalist slate is earned with your involvement via nominations at podcastawards.com. And you can do it anytime this month. The nominations close July 31st at 9 p.m. Eastern, but why wait? Just do it. It's good to get things all together, and we would love to have the honor of your support again this year. And here's the deal. You can only submit nominations once per email address, so gather all your favorites to submit them at the same time. Then go to podcastawards.com to nominate your Packers Fan Podcast in the sports category. You'll see it in the drop-down list of the other shows that we are competing against to be nominated as a finalist again this year, and some of our other favorite podcasts that we would like you to nominate at the same time, because you put them all in there at once and then you click submit. You have to create a password, and then you may or may not get a confirmation email to confirm that you're not some bot trying to hack the system or something like that. But keep an eye out for that. So some of our other favorite podcasts that we would like you to consider nominating at the same time as you nominate the Packers Fan Podcast, starting at the top of the board, as you'll see it when you go to podcastawards.com. In the People's Choice category, we recommend Sir Troy and Superfan Aaron's The Blacklist Exposed. It's the fan podcast devoted to the hit TV show The Blacklist. Now, there's a lot of them in there to scroll through, we understand. So get down to the T's, because that's where you'll find The Blacklist Exposed. Now, in the arts category, right next to that, Resourceful Designer. We would love to have you help nominate Mark DeCote's Resourceful Designer podcast. He is the podcast cover art designer extraordinaire. In fact, he is the one that designed the Packers Fan Podcast cover art that you see all over the place in your podcast player, on our website, and things like that. So that's Resourceful Designer in the arts category. Now, down to games and hobbies. In the games and hobbies category, The Gaming Outsider. Again, that's down on the list in the T's, because it is The Gaming Outsider. That's the podcast that Packers Fan Podcast host Scott Clark and friends produce. So The Gaming Outsider in games and hobbies. A little further down in politics and news, we'd love to have you nominate Consider This. Longtime listener, even before I was doing the Packers podcast, Doug in Atlanta has been listening to my shows, and I'd love it if you could help him out as well. Consider This is the name of his podcast. So in politics and news, please nominate Consider This. And of course, sports. Why not nominate your Packers Fan Podcast in the sports category? Please, 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 and thank you. And then in the bottom left area of your screen will be the technology category. Please go ahead and nominate the School of Podcasting. Podcast Hall of Famer Dave Jackson's podcast and website can help you launch your own podcast the right way and improve your existing one. I listen every week, and Dave Jackson and I go way back, and would love it if you would nominate School of Podcasting in the technology category. In the TV and film category, I'm conflicted because I've got a couple that I'd love to have get nominated and make the final slate of 5 or 6 finalists that will be announced in a couple of months. We've got The Hollywood Outsider. And of course, it's in alphabetical order, the list of podcasts to choose from. And it'll be down in the T's because it is The Hollywood Outsider. That is the show hosted each and every week by superfan Aaron Peterson. It started out originally with current Packers Fan Podcast co-host Scott Clark joining Aaron on the show. In fact, Sir Troy has also been on several episodes of The Hollywood Outsider. I've been on a couple as well. Another great option is Hank and Alex's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan podcast. Of course, you've seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is in its final season right now. There's some really exciting things happening there. So if you feel drawn that way, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan podcast in the TV and film category. Now, of course, if you have a spouse or a child with their own email address, maybe you could split it up and each of them get a nomination. I'd love them both to make it to the finals, if at all possible. So I want to thank you for listening to this special episode while we wait for preseason games. Who would have ever thought we're waiting for preseason games to maybe happen? If not, the regular season will be here soon enough, and we will be back with more episodes of the Packers Fan Podcast. And with that, thank you for all of your nominations, and go, Pack, go. And if you need all the further details written out, you can go, Pack, go, right to PackersFanPodcast.com.